Good evening and welcome to the Island Sports Center here at Robert Morris. My name is Brian Mitchell. This is our PIHL Playoff Preview panel. I'd like to introduce the panelists for you for this upcoming Penguins and Class B Cup. Ed Major, one of our in-the-rink reporters. High school hockey historian Jeff Morrow is here with us today. And Matt Gajtka, you know him from a lot of our Peters Township coverage and one of our broadcasters for our Burg Hockey Live. How's everybody doing tonight on this Sunday night?
Excited. Ready to go for this play-in game, first of all, tonight.
Ready to go.
Ready to do this. Okay. So we're just going to jump right into it. First question I'm going to have is Class B, and we're going to just jump in and look at the standings, the statistics, and all that stuff, and then we'll look at the bracket. First things first, congratulations to both Michael Felsing and Matt Trzynski, your scoring champions in Class 2A. They scored 50 points apiece, and Dusty Garagash of Montour right behind them. So congratulations to those guys. It was a good season, a good chase there for the scoring title in Class AA. And let's get that set up properly, your goaltending champion for this year, based off of so many games, is going to end up being Eddie Nowicki. Eddie Nowicki and Vinny Amatucci will be side and side on that. Danny Mitchell, you look at numbers, you had a lot of guys who played in basically a pairing this year, so it's hard to say. Danny Mitchell had the most minutes of qualifying goaltenders, and he finished 9-5 on the season, but definitely a good run for goaltenders and scoring in AA this year, so that played out to what we saw released last week, our pairings for this game. And we're not even finished yet because the West bracket, we're going to decide that tonight, guys. And the first game we know is going to be at the Barrel Ice Complex tomorrow, and that's going to be Mars hosting one of the two teams you're going to see later in Montour and West Allegheny. And that's going to be covered by Matt Popchalk and Glenn Himes up at Barrel. Once, by the way, guys, we have covered every game this year in the first round for the first time ever, so we hope that you follow along in this postseason. But so we'll say this right now. Montour, West Allegheny today. Matt Gajtka and I will be on the call for that game. We'll have it live after this contest. Matt Gajtka, who do you have?
Wow, what a question to start
I'm going to
with.
open it. I have to open it. We're just going to jump right into it.
No, that's fine. Well, if you look at the end of the season, West Allegheny finished on a down note. We covered that game here against Franklin Regional. They lost 5-1, never were in it, and they had to really hope that Montour didn't win out, and Montour did lose in a close one to Baldwin later that same night, 13 days ago here. And then Montour took care of business at Penn Trafford to set up this play-in game tonight. You know, what's interesting about the Southwest, 4-team division, but they have 3 of the top 4 goal differentials in all of Class AA. So there's your little nugget for right now. So one of those teams, Baldwin, West A, Montour, well, Baldwin's in, but one of the two in tied for second place, West A and Montour, aren't going to make the playoffs, which on the surface is a shame, but for us it's a lot of fun because it's going to be a really tight matchup on paper at least this evening. I probably would go with Montour because they played most recently. West A is coming off a long break. That's going to be difficult to ramp it up for this winner-take-all game, so I'll go with Montour.
Jeff?
Boy, this is a tough game to pick, Mitch. I'll tell you that Montour, to me, I agree with what Matt said. I think that they come off on a high note. I had a chance to watch the first part of the Baldwin game and a little bit of your coverage online with Baldwin and Montour. I'm impressed with Montour. I think their goaltending is very good. But let's not forget something here. You got a guy in Josh Ferry for West Allegheny that we saw over the holidays here. He could get red hot.
He can get on.
He's a terrific goaltender. With Nick Bandy, West Allegheny's a very, very good team. This is going to be a close hockey game. This could go to overtime, and I'm going to pick West Allegheny.
Oh, West Allegheny.
One on each side.
I think
You got the tiebreaker,
I'm
Ed.
inclined to agree with Jeff on the West Allegheny. Just like he said, Josh Ferry is a guy that can steal you a game when you need him the most, and we saw that a few weeks ago with West A defeating Baldwin, giving them their only loss of the season. Josh Ferry played phenomenal in that game, and he rises to the occasion as he did in the PA Hockey Scholastic Showcase in December, as he did against Baldwin a couple weeks ago. So I think he'll do the same thing here again against 2 of the top 3 scorers in AA, being on Montour's team. But I think he'll rise to the occasion.
I like that. I like both of those. And, of course, both those teams elevating from Single A this season. They're going to play Mars at Barrel Ice Complex next Monday at 7 p.m. Move down the bracket a little bit, and Baldwin will host either Meadville or Quaker Valley, our other play-in game tonight. That's going to be at Frozen Pond Arena at 8:50 p.m. tonight. So tune in for that one. Don't tune in for that one. We don't have that one available right now. We're trying to get somebody out there late. Baldwin, Meadville, they'll play at Ice Castle, or Meadville or Quaker Valley. They'll play at Ice Castle Arena 7 p.m. Ed will be there for that contest on Monday. So let's see, Baldwin, what can you say about the Highlanders this year? You see West Allegheny and Montour come in on a tear. Baldwin has just had the one-up all year. Who do you like in one of those possible matchups? I mean, is there some way you can lose the Baldwin's going to lose that matchup?
Well, you take that. You take. Let's say Meadville gets in over Quaker Valley. Remember, I think that Baldwin-Meadville game earlier this season went to overtime, and so Baldwin had a little trouble dispatching them. That was probably, I think, their closest game before that loss to West Allegheny. So Meadville has kind of proven that they can go toe-to-toe with the Highlanders, and maybe will Baldwin remember this? Probably, and maybe that'll give him a little extra spark to defeat them convincingly this time. Who knows? The only way to know for sure is to tune in and find out if that happens.
And before we go any further, it's not a, hey, there's no Quaker Valley. Quaker Valley can very much be in it with Meadville at any time.
Yeah, definitely.
Meadville, the other team that elevated from, one of the other teams that elevated from Single A last season. So it's definitely something to pay attention to, that play-in game. But Baldwin has just been on absolute terror this season. Cindric's been a great year on net. So when we look at that, Jeff Morrow, what do you think about Baldwin?
Well, I'd first like to talk about the Meadville-Quaker Valley matchup. I think this is a very intriguing matchup. I mean, you have Bemis on the one side of Quaker Valley. He's a very, very adept scorer. And I had a chance to talk to J.B. Plunkett today. They're very concerned about Quaker Valley right now. They're not even thinking about Baldwin. But the goaltending could be an interesting matchup there. Jordan McCurdy, who played for Meadville, they had a terrific game with Mars and went went down to the final minute, and there were 3 goals in the final minute. You have two very, very experienced state playoff coaches in Kevin Quinn from Quaker Valley and Jamie Plunkett from Meadville.
Yeah.
They know the ropes of this. They know how to play close games. And whoever comes out of that game is going to have to turn around within 24 hours and go play at Ice Castle against Baldwin. But, maybe that's a good warm-up for Baldwin to play a game less than 24 hours from that point. So I give either of them – there's been a lot of upsets over the years, many, 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 many. But both goaltenders for Quaker Valley and for Meadville are very capable of stealing that game.
Absolutely.
And so whoever comes out of that game is going to be a very good matchup.
Yes. Matt Gajtka, you have any take on this? Matt, you didn't get to see a lot of the double A or single A. We brought you in about halfway through the season, so.
Well, I will say one thing about Baldwin and Greater Latrobe as a corollary, too. Both of those teams have lost just once in regulation this season. And the question is that a help or is that a hindrance when it comes down to the end? Do you start to get a little too overconfident? In the case of Baldwin, they lost a couple of weeks ago to West A. So maybe that's a blessing for the Highlanders. They can take that and say, all right, we're not invincible here. But both they and Greater Latrobe have outscored opponents by about 100 goals this season.
Yeah.
It's 2 colossuses in Class AA as far as I'm concerned. I'd be very surprised if we don't see those 2 meet up in the Penguins Cup final.
All right, move down one more, and Plum Hempfield. This is one where Hempfield came on at the end of the year, was able to jump Franklin Regional, and Penn Trafford was in there late, too. That was an interesting race as we went down. Hempfield was able to take care of Hampton. Franklin Regional had a hard time and ended up losing to Greater Latrobe. I mean, they had a lead in that game last week. You were there, Jeff Morrow.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Hempfield to me is a juggernaut team. Goaltending's a problem for them, let's face it. Goaltending's a problem for Plum. Both those teams can score. I mean, Plum, Nick Pushik, they have Baranowski, Schlegel. Those kids have played in some playoff hockey games here over the last couple of years. I give Hempfield an advantage. I'll tell you, Trzynski, they have Trent Gray on the back line. They've been playing for their playoff lives for a month here, And they other than the Meadville game that they lost, Hempfield has not slipped up. And I give Hempfield a decided advantage in that game against Plum.
Matt, you have any take on this one?
Well, I know I saw Plum last year as a AAA team, and it wasn't their best. They lost a lot of players from the previous season, and now back down in AA. But it seems like it's a program that has a good amount of stability outside of, it's high school hockey, so there's going to be some turnover. You're going to have a rough year every once in a while. But when you look at how the two teams have played this year, he said it. It's a battle of two pretty good offenses. So, I think if I had to pick one, I would probably go with Hempfield just because of how they've had at least the advantage in most of the games they've played. Plum is just around a 500 team on the year, just because of the way the playoffs are set up. It's going to be, you're going to have maybe some mismatches in the first round. Because in the case of Plum, 19 points, 9-8-1 record, and you have Hempfield with 11-7 and 22 points. So even though Hempfield was the second-place team in their division, they had a better record than Plum. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you look at some of these seedings. It's not necessarily who was better in the grand scheme of things, just within the division.
I gotta agree with both my colleagues here. Hempfield Plum, just a huge offensive matchup, and although I feel like Hempfield kind of has that advantage because there's only one Matt Trzynski, and even though I personally haven't seen Hempfield a lot this year, I know our other photographer Jared Toddhunter has seen them quite a few times down the stretch, and just by reading some of his articles and his posts, I feel like I've been at that game because I've seen Trzynski's name just thrown out there so many times. So,
all right,
I'm inclined to give it to Hempfield over Plum.
All right, so we're talking about. I want to mention something about Plum. Of course, we're up on the island right now. There's a middle school game going on behind us. We have visitors running in at all times. This is great. I want to make a note to everybody about Plum, their situation this year. They had that unfortunate event up at Barrel, I believe it was in November or December, where there was a bunch of suspensions issued, and they had a tough time. They lost a lot of their lineup for a short period of time in the middle of the season. So Plum, they came on at the end of the year. They lost a couple of their players halfway through the season, but they were able to regain them as the season progressed. So that might be something to pay attention to with the Mustangs. And, playing shorthanded halfway through the season, I believe they had a really rough stretch of opponents at that time, too. So they took a couple extra losses based off of that, possibly. I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but I'm also saying there are some outside issues with the Plum Mustangs. And speaking of outside issues and Armstrong being matched up with Greater Latrobe in the first round. What do you say about this one, guys? I mean, I love Armstrong. I think they're rebounding as a program. Last season was a down season. They got into a favorable division for a growing team, but as you move along, Greater Latrobe is waiting for them at Kirk Nevin Arena. I will be there tomorrow. Just for everybody's record, we will be broadcasting both Kirk Nevin Arena games tomorrow. I will be on the call for those. I'll see you there. Anyway, Ed Major, I'm going to lead off with you here today.
I mean, you said it. What can you say about Armstrong? Like, in a favorable division, they're up and coming. They're doing pretty well, but their reward for that is a nice first-round date with Greater Latrobe. As Matt had said earlier, Latrobe and Baldwin kind of the two, juggernauts in that Class 2A. And really, I'm not even sure what to really say here. I personally, although I haven't seen much of either of these teams, I will say one of the times that I have seen Armstrong, that they got into a lot of penalty trouble in a game with Shaler early in the season, and it seems like they've kind of they got into a little trouble a couple other times throughout the season. So maybe that's a key point to watch in this game. Can they stay out of the box? Can they keep their best players on the ice against Latrobe and out of the box?
Okay, Jeff Morrow.
This is a young team. I mean, Lee Grafton's been trying to build a program up there since they went to the state finals a couple of years ago, through a lot of young players and rebuilding their program. They may be a year away from being a very good team, to be honest with you. But as Ed mentioned, if Armstrong's going to take penalties, you're going to have to face Alex Walker, Cole Ferry, Lane Ruffner. I mean, we saw the explosiveness of Latrobe the other night when I was texting you back and forth, down 2 goals with 6 minutes to play and come back and win in overtime. If Vinny Amatucci's in between the pipes, I think Latrobe's one of the favorites by far to advance to the Penguin Cup. I don't think Hempfield can stop them, and it'll remain to be seen if they can stop themselves. I think Latrobe's gonna. This could be their year.
Yeah, that's one of the points I want to talk about in a second. Do you have anything for me here, Matt?
Well, Greater Latrobe, you mentioned, Jeff, the close call late in the season. They also lost in overtime to Hampton. They lost to Baldwin. That's the only loss they have, but it was a regulation loss right at the end of January. 5 players, though, with 20 points or more. Goaltending this year, it's almost inconsequential. They played so well in front of both guys. So it's hard to say which goalies had the better year. I think they'll have a nice matchup in the second round against Hempfield. But, Latrobe and, like I said, Latrobe and Baldwin, I would put some tokens on that one if there was the opportunity.
All right, and
so are we wrapping up Double A to pick champions, or
we're working on this right. What we're going to do next is I'm going to ask you basically, who do you like? Who is your pick right now? If you want to, if you don't want to, I'm not going to put the pressure on you. But if you feel like feel like somebody is hanging out to you, just let me know, and why.
Eddie,
go ahead, Eddie. You want to start?
Well, I'm going to at least go so far as to say, as Matt said, Baldwin and Latrobe. Wouldn't be surprised to see them in the Penguins Cup final. And if we end up with that, if Baldwin makes it to that point, I think they can beat Latrobe and claim their first Penguins Cup since the mid-70s.
2013.
So they're 7 years.
So
yeah.
So I think Baldwin can get over Latrobe there. They have that experience beating Latrobe, and like I've said earlier this season, they have the experience playing from any situation you throw them into. They can play from behind. They can blow you out. They can hold you off. They can play any situation you throw them into.
Awesome. Jeff?
Double A's interesting all the way across the board. I like Latrobe. They have 11 seniors. I think they're going to advance to the Penguin Cup this year. I don't think Hempfield could stop them because of the goaltending issue. But over on the other side of the bracket, I'm going to tell you right now, there's a dark horse in this, and it's going to come out of this game tonight. Montour and West Allegheny. West Allegheny gets into a game against Baldwin or Montour. I watched the Montour-Baldwin game. That was a very, very close game. And Felsing and Gergatch are juggernaut players, as are Bandy and Nolan and Gallardo and Sweet for West Allegheny. These are good teams. And that game that's going to be played here on the island in another week here, if it comes down to Baldwin, West Allegheny, Montour, you're going to see a terrific hockey game there.
Absolutely, and that was based off of that race that we saw in the Northwest. And then, Mars, go ahead.
One more thing. Remember one thing. Montour got the taste of it. Their school had never won a Penguin Cup, till Clay Shell came there. They won it last year. There's still kids on that team that have tasted it a little bit a year ago. So don't think that that's not going to have a factor in these Penguin Cup playoffs.
Oh, absolutely not. And that was and you remember that route.
Although I picked West Allegheny.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's one of those things. Matt Gajtka.
I'm just glad we have this game tonight because I completely agree with Jeff that if there is an upset to be had in the Class AA bracket, it's going to be the winner of tonight's game. And you have to love the track record of both teams, and they're going to be battle-tested right away. Now, the challenge will be tomorrow, obviously, to have some legs and be able to withstand the pressure from Mars in Mars's building. But they get past that, then it gets interesting. But if Mars is able to hold off one of those teams, then I think it's Baldwin's side of the bracket.
I like that.
And Mars is a team we haven't talked a whole lot about. Danny Mitchell's a terrific goaltender. They've had a hot second half of the season. They could give Montour and West Allegheny all they can handle tomorrow night.
It's funny you would say that because I'm looking at this bracket, and I like Greater Latrobe as overall because I do think it's their year. I think it's been a long time and a long time coming, a couple mean upsets. I also am going to raise it. I'm going to say there's a dark horse, and that Mars team is a dark horse for me because they had the really slow beginning of the year, but that didn't matter to them because they had the least amount of games played by Christmas of any AA team. They played the majority of their schedule in the second half, more than any other team, and they had destiny in their hands for that division title, and they went and they took it. So that's an opportunity for Mars to come through and use that momentum and continue and build. I like them as a dark horse, but I don't like them enough to say they're going to be better than Greater Latrobe this year. And Greater Latrobe, I have the feeling is going to take it this year. That's about what I have to say on that one. All right, thanks, guys, for your AA picks. We're going to move into Class Single A now, and we're going to talk about the, well, number one, congratulations, Addis Ultenbekov, your scoring champion in Single A by 1 point over Will O'Brien, 57-56. The Bishop McCourt, I believe he's a sophomore this year at Bishop McCourt, so he'll be here, winning that title. Bishop McCourt, we'll talk about them in a second here. In net, it's going to be, who do we have in net this year in Class Single A? Should be an easy one to say. Chris McFadden of North Catholic. And that's one to pay attention to is they went really well, but they carried them, too, by what they did there with a 937 save percentage and 4 shutouts on the year. We'll move into the bracket now and talk about that Single A bracket. We'll start with the North Catholic, with the Trojans and the South Park Eagles. Who wants to start here? I'll let
Eddie,
anybody.
you want to go?
Eddie, you want to take it?
In this kind of quadrant of the bracket, I'd have to take North Catholic, just based solely based almost solely on Chris McFadden. I think he can shut down the South Park offense pretty effectively, and you've seen on the other side of the goaltending matchup there with Paremba in South Park, he has struggled a little bit when he lets in 1-2 goals. It kind of snowballs a little bit for him, and he struggled at times. I don't see him as consistent as Chris McFadden, so I give North Catholic the nod in this quadrant of the bracket with that matchup.
Well, I had a chance to see North Catholic play and South Park, and there have a couple of kids on North Catholic, Zazort and Schaefer, that are pretty good scorers. Those guys can play the game. South Park's really struggled down the stretch. They really almost fell out of the playoffs late in the season. So I give North Catholic a decided advantage. And with McFadden in goal, and I think that's going to be a win for them. Well,
we saw Mr. McFadden stop, 51 shots up at Lemieux
Indiana,
Complex about a month ago. In fact, it was almost exactly a month ago. Indiana had an early lead. They led 3-1, and then from then on it was shut down. And North Catholic was not ready to play that game, and they won. 6-4 or 7-4, pardon me. They had the ability to get it rolling, and you brought up Desort, Jeff. He's a dynamic athlete, a lot of fun to watch. We saw him score a great shorthanded goal in that one on Berg Hockey Live. North Catholic's going to have some challengers. They weren't the most potent division winner out of the group. There's a lot of goals scored in Class A compared to Class AA. But just 40 allowed on the season, and no one was able to match that in the entire class. So that can get you a long way in the postseason when things tend to tighten up a little bit, if not a lot. And North Catholic is certainly the favorite in that one, even though South Park, you look at that Southwest division, all 4 teams were above 500. So they played some tough competition all year long. North Hills, Chartiers Valley, in other divisions, they would have made the playoffs. In that division, they did not. So I don't think it's a runaway by any means, but I would certainly give the nod to the Trojans in the first round.
They're all looking at me funny and looking at the screen because I just brought up the previous score of these two teams when they played earlier this season. I was there at the Lemieux Sports Complex for that, and it was a 2-1 victory for North Catholic. South Park opened it up with Bukowski scoring, and then Pelozis and Schaefer scored for North Catholic later in the game. But that game was so tight. The defensive battle between the two teams was a tight thing, and you know what? Seeing that type close of a game now puts it in perspective for me. If South Park can get out of this funk that they've been in the second half, it's kind of starting to slide in my mind that the Eagles can pull off that upset. And, there were a lot of questions about North Catholic after they opened their division schedule and completed it immediately at 6-0 and what they were going to do in the remainder of their season. They answered a lot of those questions along the way, taking down some of those bigger teams, and were able to get there. So.
And that
like
tight score there is why I brought up the goaltender matchup. When I looked at it, because I figure if it's a tight game like that one, it's going to come down to the goaltenders.
Absolutely. All right, Thomas Jefferson and Blackhawk. Anybody want to speak up against Thomas Jefferson in this one? I respect the Cougars of Blackhawk, what they've been trying to do there in the program. But Thomas Jefferson's just been on a different level this season. Anybody disagree with me?
Listen, Thomas Jefferson manhandled Bishop McCourt.
Yes.
I mean, this is a very good team. Bill Krause has been in this position for the last 3 or 4 years. 2017, we almost see them knock off Franklin Regional. Then the next year, they played Meadville in the semis. He has a lot of experience, and some of these kids have a lot of experience. And Luke Rapepi, the goaltender, is the kid that's been in between the pipes, and he's now a junior. And I think that, with Paizo, O'Brien, I'm trying to name it, Holzer, Danny Holzer. Those kids are really terrific hockey players. This could be a year for Thomas Jefferson, and I'm looking at that second-round matchup with North Catholic, which was the rematch for the game that was played about a week and a half ago. It's going to be a terrific hockey game.
All right.
TJ won 5-3 in that hockey game against North Catholic you're just talking about. So a good test before the playoffs, too. That also helps as you go into the postseason here. 7 times TJ scored 10 goals this season. You could just rattle off the impressive stats for them. So I would echo that sentiment, that looking forward to the second round there, because I believe both the favorites are going to get through at the top half of the bracket.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson can get scoring from anywhere in their lineup. And I just want to make a little note that every time I've seen Thomas Jefferson, they have only dressed one goaltender, and that was Luke Rapepi. And if anyone's paid attention to my college hockey coverage with Duquesne, you know that when you throw all the load onto a single goaltender, it may or may not work out too well. And Luke Rapepi, but though for Thomas Jefferson, has more than risen to the occasion.
I've actually spoken to the coaches about that several times. I've heard from several people what happened there is they had a player the previous year before Rapepi's freshman year that played in. He came in, he played goal for them. He was a skater for the entire season.
Yes.
And then they brought in Rapepi, and they were worried about a freshman goaltender. He had that, 13-3 season, or 16-3 season again a couple seasons ago. And he's just been continuing to build on those numbers every year.
Yeah.
So he's only a junior, but he has had experience for the last 3 years. So, yes, I agree with you on the Luke Rapepi train there. I've been watching him since the Greensburg-Salem. I think it was that time it was the Greensburg Central Catholic tournament whenever he first started, when he got his first varsity start. So that's one of the things to pay attention to. You have something to say, Jeff?
No,
okay.
I honestly, Thomas Jefferson's my favorite to win it all.
Yeah.
I think it's due time for.
Yeah.
They haven't won the Penguin Cup since 2000, and those were some dynamic teams back then, 98, 99, and 2000, with some guys that went to the National Hockey League and played Division I hockey. But the history is that Thomas Jefferson has always had a great program. Bill Krause, a former player for Thomas Jefferson, and I think they have a very good chance of running the table.
I like them. I like that a lot. Now, Kiski Norwin at Center Ice Arena. Jared Toddener will be there. I'm sorry, North Catholic South Park on Tuesday. Gary Heeman will be in the house covering that game for us in our coverage here. I apologize, didn't get a chance to tell you all that stuff. Ice Castle Arena, once again, it will be Ed Major. Kiski Norwin, Jared Toddener on Tuesday at 8:10. This is another one. This bracket itself is the chase bracket. These two divisions had a really good race at the end. It ended up being Kiski as the division winner there with the second seed of Norwin in the South. What do you have to say about that? Kiski coming off a 1-15 season, able to take their division this year.
Eddie?
I think we're really missing Jared Toddener here, because I think he's seen Kiski and Norwin
He's trying to rest up for tomorrow. He's trying to rest up for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
maybe I should have taken that advice. But I don't think I can really call one here between the two. Like I said, both the divisions have been kind of chase divisions, and both these teams have risen to the occasion late in the season. When they've needed to win, they've both won, and they've gotten themselves into the positions they're in now. It's going to be a good, close game. Let's defer. What do you say, Jeff?
Well, Kiski doesn't have a whole lot of history in playoffs, and Eric Batik is a heck of a goaltender. He's really come a long way over the last few seasons. And they have a couple of kids on that team that can score. But I think we're missing a component here, and it's the Norwin Knights. This program has gone from one of the doormats of high school hockey over the last 3 years to a very competitive hockey program under Denny Tokarski and Matt Bertani. And I'll tell you right now, they could be a surprise team in these playoffs and could get to the Penguin Cup Finals. Their goaltending has been pretty good. He's been sharp, but they have a couple of kids that could score. Norwin's a very good team and a team that not a lot of people are talking about, and they could be a kind of a Franklin Regional of sorts that we saw 4 or 5 years ago that comes out of nowhere and gets to the Penguin Cup.
Absolutely, I like that one. Matt Gajtka, you have any take on this one?
You can skip me on that one
Skip him
because
on
I
this
have
one.
no idea about these two teams.
It's-
I know they exist as programs.
It's
so we'll move on.
honesty. It's honesty.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm not going to try to BS
I got you.
So,
I
hey.
no, I agree with you on that.
Now,
That's fine.
the last game I do have something to say about.
Well, let me get through.
Yeah.
I'll mention this Kiski-Norwin matchup. I've seen these two programs, and you'd mentioned how they've been the last couple seasons. A couple years ago, Kiski had a pretty strong season.
Yes.
Graduated a lot of seniors. It's one of those senior situations where they just came in and they were trying to rebuild their program, and this year just came out of nowhere. And they've got the scores. That game, I will say, in my eyes, is a toss-up. That could be either team moving on, and I'll explain in a second why it's a toss-up, but I also have something to say about that one. We'll move to the next one, Bishop McCourt, Indiana. Any takers?
I'll start with that one, actually.
Okay.
Just because I saw Indiana play, and boy, was I impressed with their overall effort that night up at Lemieux a month ago against a really difficult team in North Catholic to try to score on. They generated 55 shots against the team that gave up the fewest goals in the league, so they did something right. It was just wasn't their night, and sometimes that happens in the sport of hockey. A goalie is just dynamic and tremendous. Maybe you don't finish a couple of chances that you should have. But overall, as you alluded to, it was a challenging race with Kiski. Fox Chapel was in it too in the Northeast. So they're battle-tested in that way. They have an outstanding record. They scored how many goals here? 107 on the season. They gave up 70, though. So I think maybe if you had to pick one of the top teams in the league to be on upset watch, it might be in this one against a Bishop McCourt squad that is also one of the top finishers in the league. Just 2 losses all season long for McCourt. So probably tighter than you would imagine if you look at 11-6 Indiana against 17-2 Bishop McCourt. And I don't know if I want to pick necessarily, but I would just say that Indiana can certainly bring it, and maybe they're due for a breakout here in the first round to get things going. They did play well enough at the end of the year to hold off. They were in some trouble there for a while, but they picked up the points they needed to, and that says a lot about them because a loss like they had at North Catholic could really send a team spiraling, but it didn't really happen for Jordan Haynes' group, so kudos to them there.
I give you that one. I agree with you. Indiana's had that same season. I've said bad luck for the last couple years in the postseason. It's been one of those where they've had the ability. They're coming off a 4-year starter that now they're moving into. I guess what happened was their starter didn't make it to the regular season. I can't remember exactly what happened there, but I believe my pregame I got notes that they were supposed to have a starter that didn't end up playing for them. So they've actually brought in their JV goaltender to play this season. Played very well, as far as I can tell. The preseason notes said I believe Murdoch was supposed to be their starter this year. So O'Connor's come out and played the entire season for them, and he's played very well. Now, Indiana, it's a weird situation. They've got the dynamic offense. I like that, how they're doing there. McCourt is just all around right now. And they're coming off of a season where they were disqualified from the postseason. So they're going to want to come back after it because they're coming off of that single-A title the year prior. So you got a little taste there. Now the guys who didn't get a chance to fight for it last year are going to get the chance to fight for it this year.
They're going to be that much hungrier.
They're going to be hungrier, like you were saying with having with Montour having that taste. You still have some guys on that squad who had that taste. So.
Well, one of the interesting things about it, I was looking at the schedule, was how this game transpired. First of all, at the site, how does Bishop McCourt, who earned a home game, play a 9 o'clock game in Greensburg for a playoff game? It's absolutely ludicrous in my mind. But let's talk about the game itself. Jordan Haynes has a lot of experience, okay, and he's been around the game a long time. He played for me actually, but. He knows what he's doing. He has some players, Zach Eisenhower, Danny Williams, not to mention some other players that can score goals. Cole Bradley hasn't had that great of a year. He hasn't really. And, you know, I'm looking at this and saying, hey, you know what? Bishop McCourt shouldn't be getting ahead of themselves. They got a tough game right off the bat with Indiana. And you know this. These two teams don't like each other. I don't know if you're aware of that. But there's a rivalry there that goes back many, many, many years in the amateur levels between Cambria and the Indiana program.
Right.
So this is going to be a really good hockey game. And I think, you know, I give Bishop McCourt the edge. They have a kid, William Miller, that's a defenseman who I think is one of the best defensemen in all of high school hockey, not just single A. He's a terrific player. And, you know, they have a couple of their Russian players that are pretty good as well.
Yeah.
Bryce Bear's another kid. You know, they have some really good players. So Bishop McCourt, I think, is the favorite, but Indiana could give them a lot of trouble.
I like it. I like it. Now, though, what you were I'll touch on what you what happened was I think that there was an availability issue.
Okay.
So that's why they can't get a home game. Availability at the War Memorial. I don't have all the details, but I think that's what ended up happening. And I will just, you know, at this point it's scheduled for the Nevin Arena. And yes, I will be there. We will be broadcasting that live from Nevin, 9:15. That's part of the doubleheader on Monday. That'll be my call. I'll see you guys out tomorrow night on that one. But that's what, you know, that's double A. That's what single A looks like this season. And I think we're all on the same page basically with the Thomas Jefferson train this year, that it's probably one of theirs to lose. So
yeah, I think Thomas Jefferson's the favorite, but there's a couple of teams that could rise to the occasion and take it if they're not going to take it.
Absolutely.
Don't count out North Catholic, and we'll see that. If North Catholic gets through South Park, Thomas Jefferson gets through Blackhawk, and we'll see that North Catholic Thomas Jefferson matchup in the semifinals too. So
Question for you, Ed. When's the last time that North Catholic won the Penguin Cup?
If you asked me this a couple weeks ago, I would know because I was looking at the PA hockey site quite a lot. I can't tell you off the top of my head right now.
Well, the team was 1995. They defeated Franklin Regional actually at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena.
Yeah.
That was a very good team that had Jimmy Abbott that ended up at the University of New Hampshire. And their program went away for a while, and it's great to see North Catholic back in the fold. They've done a nice job with that program. And, you know, I agree with you. I think they have a chance.
All right. So we're going to move into the AAA circuit now. Class 3A, first things first. Congratulations to Mitchell Geinzer taking the scoring title in his first season at the varsity level. 21 goals, 20 assists, 47 points on the season. Tyler Lamarck came close with 42 points. We knew that going into our last broadcast, Matt Gajtka. We actually had a little chat with his father, too, in middle. And it didn't play at the varsity level last season. I believe what he said is a junior, right? The junior this season.
Yeah,
so he wanted to play. Yeah.
And I didn't see him because they were coming up from AA, so I wasn't aware of that. But yeah, incredible story there, and just one of the cool things about Class AAA, which was incredibly wide open this year. It was so much fun to see all those teams, and with the exception of a couple at the bottom, really the playoff field is it's really deep.
It's crazy.
So
it's crazy.
I may have sounded pretty definitive on some of my picks in the other two classes. I'm not going to be very definitive in this.
I don't think we all.
It's hard to, just because, well, you could say North Allegheny, they were running away with it for a bit, but in the end they just end up edging Upper St. Clair by a single point and beating Peters by 3. So it ended up being really tight in the top 3, top 4, top 6 going on down the list.
Yeah. So then we're going to talk in the net. It was Seth Faulkner this year from Cathedral Prep, a .924 save percentage for Faulkner. They got hot midway through the season. We're going to talk about that in a second when we look at the bracket. And, yeah, that AAA bracket right now. Parity this year in AAA. Parity is the key. You didn't have – those races were still decided in the last week. Like, we'd wait till Thursday to figure out some of the matchups. Tuesday, we would have been even more up in the air if some things would have happened. So – here's what we look at. North Allegheny, Bethel Park, Tuesday, March 3rd at the Barrel Ice Complex. I believe Alan Saunders will be at that matchup covering that for us. North Allegheny this year, guys, I'm just going to open it up to you. Bethel Park, St. Margaret champions, had a tournament championship early in the season. Moved along throughout the season, wasn't exactly what it came out to be. But how do you see that game matching up here? Who wants to start? Who wants to open up?
See, I'm a little surprised with well, Okay, I guess I'm not entirely surprised that Bethel Park isn't quite as high as I had maybe picked them at the beginning of the season. I actually had picked them to finish in the top of AAA, but even if you look back last year, the Montour Spartans went winless in that St. Margaret tournament. They went 0-3, just got outplayed all 3 games. They went through, they won the Penguins Cup. So both extremes can happen. Bethel Park, they won the St. Margaret tournament, but that really didn't translate all that well into the regular season. But I mean, they've won when it mattered at the end of this season here, and if you're in, you're in, and the playoffs is an entirely different season. So don't count them out. Don't count out Joey Wondrisco, who can go and score at will however many times he wants to in any given game. So they could give North Allegheny a run for their money here.
North Allegheny's been showing a lot more holes in their game the last couple weeks, too.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're going out there and just dominating like they were in the first half of the season. They've been in closer games as this season progressed. They just dropped a game to Pine Richland in the last couple weeks. In the last week, I think. So, yeah. So, and Upper St. Clair just needed a win on Tuesday, and they would have tied them for first place, but lost in a tiebreaker. Jeff, you have anything to say about this matchup?
You and I called the game about less than a month ago when North Allegheny played Bethel Park, and we saw the first period was very closely knit. What happened for Bethel Park is they need to get the lead in this game to be able to have a chance against North Allegheny. Mike Magnato's team is 3 lines, sometimes 4 lines strong. They're gonna come out blazing, and trust me, he's not taking anything for granted with Jim McVeigh in Bethel Park. So I give North Allegheny. I think they're going to win the game, but don't count out Bethel Park ever.
No.
We're a year removed from them playing here at the Island in a double overtime semifinal matchup. So if you think Bethel Park's counted out, think again. And I think, North Allegheny will win the game, but I think Bethel Park can give them all they can handle.
Well, speaking of Jim McVeigh, 22nd year as Bethel Park's head coach. So, yeah, he's been doing it for a while. 24th overall at Bethel Park, I believe. And every time I've seen Bethel Park this season, which I believe is 3 times, they've looked strong. They haven't given up a lot. They outshot Peters 2-1 last month of the season. Peters Township beat them in overtime. You talked about the game against North Allegheny. They ended up losing that one 6-1, but a good start. The only team they beat in the last month of the regular season was Central Catholic, and that was 3-0, and the Vikings had a really tough year. So, it's kind of like a conflicting situation for me because it looks like they're going in on a low point, but they did hold off Mount Lebo for the final playoff spot. This one, though, I think North Allegheny has got a little something to prove here because they didn't like the way they finished the regular season. So I love the Tigers here in this one.
All right, yeah. You look at that, the Tigers, I mean, they're the defending champions in AAA. It just continuously have just improved on every season. Had question marks coming out that just filled right in. Tyler Boyles in net. You had Carapandy last season. He brought Boyles in his first varsity season as a senior, and he's just done phenomenal things in net for them. And you look along, and it's hard to say anything against North Allegheny, but you also say Jim McVeigh. Jim McVeigh is the key there.
That's all you need
and
to say.
Yeah, if it's the postseason, you never say never. So we'll move into the next bracket here to the 4-5 matchup. Cannon, McMillan, Pine Richland, Mr. Gajtka will be on the call, probably audio only for that one. At Printscape, he'll have the call on Tuesday at 9 p.m. Who wants to open this one up? Mr. Gajtka, what do you got to say?
Yeah, sure. I've seen Cannon Mac quite a bit this year, and in the past, whenever Peters Township would play Cannon Mac, it'd be kind of a run-and-gun affair, or Cannon Mac would try to make it a run-and-gun affair, and a lot of times it just wouldn't work out because they would give up more than they got. This season's been a different Big Mac's team, and I've really enjoyed watching Ryan Lamberger turn this team around and make it into more of an all-around team, a team that can defend and isn't afraid to play with some structure. And I spoke to him about a couple of months ago, and he said, yeah, there's been some success there for sure in getting guys to buy in and play an actual system. He feels like as a team, they hadn't really done that well the last couple of years. So he's trying to get that thing going. And against Pine Richland, a team that just came off a 2-1 win over North Allegheny in the last week of the regular season, it's essentially a toss-up, but Cannon Mac does have the home ice here at Printscape, and it just feels like the Big Mac's here to do something because of all the things I mentioned there. And Josh Ripp is a tremendous scorer. Danny Garver as well. They have a really good top line. Logan Ford, the captain. So if I had to pick one team, I'd go Cannon Mac in a close one. I feel like this is a stepping stone season for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cannon McMillan has been a program and a team. I'm sorry.
It's all right. We
He's
lost
unplugged.
we lost the microphone.
Just
We
yell.
unplugged Jeff
Just
Mara.
scream. We can hear you.
There you go. You're good now.
Sorry about that, Mitch.
It's all right.
But Cannon McMillan has been a program that has been up and down over the years. They've had several changeovers at coaches. But I had a chance to see them play a couple times this year, and I was very impressed with the overall buy-in that Matt was talking about. They play rough and tumble. They have good goaltending. They're going to be a good playoff team, and this has been their history. When they've gotten into the playoffs, Cannon McMillan has sometimes sniffed it out. The last time in 2015, they went to the state finals. Pine Richland, on the other hand, are coming off this AA state championship. Still have Danny Stauffer, lost 11 seniors. They have a lot of firepower on that team, too.
Absolutely.
This to me, is going to be a close game. This is going to be a 3-2, 4-3 game. Boy, it's a tough one to call. Honestly, I like Pine Richland in this one, and I'm going to tell you why. I just think that those kids had a championship pedigree, and they tasted it a year ago. And I think some of the kids that didn't have the opportunity to shine are going to step to the forefront, and they're going to. This could be one of our first overtime games in the playoffs.
Awesome. I like that, Ed. Go for it.
With Cannon Mac and Pine Richland, as Jeff said, it's going to be a toss-up between the two of them. But I think I'd give Cannon Mac the edge. Just kind of, who do you have in goal? Mario Iafrati for Cannon Mac, and he's a guy that stole them some games in the St. Margaret's tournament. I saw Cannon Mac. I saw him early in the season. He played very well against Mount Lebanon early in the season. I'm just inclined to put a lot of faith into Iafrati.
Yeah, Stauffer Iafrati is going to be a matchup. Yeah.
And that's what makes it a toss-up. Just like the goaltending matchup. Even if you just look at the goaltending matchup, it makes it a toss-up. But up and down the lineup for both teams, you can't really get much of a read on it.
Yeah, I like Pine Richland in this one. I think the history with them being able to take some of the bigger teams in last season's run, the national championship run, Joe Fulmer and Wild and everybody coming back that has returned. Stauffer, of course. I just like them in this one, but you can't count out Josh Ripp, Logan Ford, all of them. They're phenomenal talents, and it's just a slight edge for Pine Richland in this one for me. All right, the other team that came up from AA, this way voluntarily, number 2 seed, Upper St. Clair, the surprise of the year, if you had to ask me. And you look like you have something you want to say on this one, Jeff.
Well, first let's
They
start
have
off
Seneca
with
Valley. I apologize.
I think Anthony Rako's had a tough season this year. They lost their star goaltender from a year ago.
Hold on, I think your microphone. This one's a shorter cable.
Okay, we'll try the microphone again.
Try the nice
Is
microphone.
that better?
Technical difficulties.
Okay, so Seneca Valley's had a tough season. They've kind of squandered the second half of the season. Upper St. Clair, Brzezinski's done a terrific job with this team. The kid that ended up winning the scoring title, I never even heard of this kid.
Yeah,
Mitchell Geinzer.
Yeah, he played AAA last season, and he decided to play varsity. He wanted to play high school hockey. He came to high school because he wanted to play high school hockey this year.
Yeah, hence one of the things that is a hidden source of high school hockey is you have kids coming off of multiple number teams. Upper St. Clair now has 2 JV teams, and they come to the forefront as 9th and 10th graders, but they've always had a core group of kids with that program that carried them to the Penguin Cup a year ago. And the goaltending of Rourke has been really good too. So, is Devin Rourke still playing?
Yes.
He's a forward.
No, sorry.
them?
Yeah, he's still a forward for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a kid that could score some goals. So this is a dark horse team, even though they're a 2 seed. Nobody was talking about it in the beginning of the season, and they just built.
Yeah, to your point, they lost Anthony Carone last year.
Yeah.
He was one of the leading scorers in AA, and he decided to go play for the Penguins Elite, so he didn't come back to play high school. So you had question marks of where their scoring was going to come from, and in comes Mitch Gajtka. But you also look at Sam Sweet on the back end.
Yes.
You look at the support that they're getting. So that's something you're right on that. That's absolutely correct.
Upper St. Clair's a team that everybody's discounting. They're thinking that it's a fluke year.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I watched them almost win the Penguin Cup a year ago over a very heavier favored and Pine Richmond team, and they gave them all they could handle.
7-5 final.
Yes.
7-5. That one was a crazy matchup.
Yes, that was a great matchup. So don't. They're even though they're a 2 seed, I'm going to call them a dark horse because nobody else believes in them either, except for the people wearing the old 1920 Ottawa Senators jersey. and Upper St. Clair can be a team that gives teams a lot of fits in this playoff.
Phenomenal third jerseys, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them yet.
I've had a chance to see those third jerseys quite a bit, basing myself out of Icecast. I've seen my fair share of Upper St. Clair, and you know what? I'm not going to call them a dark horse. I'm going to make this known. I'm calling them my favorite to lift the Penguins Cup.
Oh, wow.
I think they got real close last year. For them, I think it was a heartbreaking loss to Pine Richmond. I think they're going to use that as motivation. And you're saying that they lost Anthony Carone last year, but at the beginning of the season, in comes another young gun, Zach Hardy, who kind of stepped into Carone's shoes and kept Upper St. Clair right where they need to be. And Upper St. Clair said, hey, we'll voluntarily play up to AAA. We think we can do it, and they're proving that they can do it.
You say that name, and we talked about this a couple times, and he was one of my favorites, like the dark horses out of the St. Margaret tournament after seeing him there. And I think we've spoke about him on the last broadcast about how he's just a feisty little guy. He has no fear whatsoever when he goes out on the ice, and that's hard to play against.
He flies.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you got Geinzer, who Jeff just mentioned. I saw him, I think it was one of kind of his first games against Bethel Park earlier in the second half of the season. Joey Wondrisco for Bethel Park just kept scoring at will, and when Upper St. Clair needed a guy to get that winning goal, to get them back on the winning side of that game and pull off the victory, it was Mitch Geinzer who came in, and he put Upper St. Clair into the win column in that game, and Geinzer hasn't looked back, and he's just stepped in a very nice leadership role in that team as well.
They are deep. That's the thing about Upper St. Clair, is they are deep when it comes to scoring, on offense and on defense. They're a very dynamic team. And Fisher, who has played the lion's share of is a very solid young goaltender. Whether they start Rourke or Fisher is still up in the air for the postseason.
Yeah, they're deep
but
on
they
goaltender
started
as well,
Fisher in that big game against Cannon McMillan because they needed that to be able to, we talked about for pride, but also Cannon McMillan needed that to win, to get a fourth seed, and get a home game in this one. So.
Yeah, Basinski's juggled that very well, and you know, Upper St. Clair has a long history of state championships, Penguin Cups. The last in 2011 when they pulled off an unbelievable run. You know what? That could be a team that we're going to be seeing play for the Penguin Cup there.
They're on the opposite side of the bracket from North Allegheny, Matt Gajtka.
I think this is my upset pick. I think Seneca Valley is going to win. I'm going to pump the brakes on the bandwagon right now. We saw Seneca Valley beat Upper St. Clair.
You
we
are
called the game right after the holiday.
correct.
Seneca Valley looked as potent that night as I've seen them. I know they haven't had the best year. They've been up and down. They don't have quite maybe the talent base that they are accustomed to having. But they're still pretty darn structured. And Upper St. Clair gives up a lot of chances and goals. They score a lot, but they give up a lot too. And that would concern me for a team coming into this level for the first time in the playoffs now, or for the first time in a while in the playoffs now. I feel like Seneca Valley's got a good effort in them. I feel they should be confident. They had 44 shots. I'm looking at this box from back in January. I realize that's 2 months ago, but I'm not really willing to jump on that Upper St. Clair train just quite yet. I want to see them put forth a nice effort, and if I had to pick an upset in this first round, I think I would go with Seneca Valley, just based on the fact that they usually shut things down really well. They make you earn it. And the question is, will Upper St. Clair have the patience? If they can't get something quick off the counter, if they can't score early and get up, they have to come from behind. Can they do it? That'll be a real test for them coming up here on Tuesday night.
Okay, so we're going to have to move along real quick. We've gone a little late, and I'm going to be coming up on time for the next game. So we're going to move into Peters Township Cathedral Prep. Who do you got and why?
I'll start with this one. We just saw this matchup last week.
Yes, we did.
We enjoyed it because Cathedral Prep, first and foremost, is a different team here in the second half. they looked like they were going to take over that game against Peters Township. Tough to beat Peters at Peters, as always. And they forced overtime there before losing in the final 12 seconds on a bad bounce, basically. So I felt like Cathedral Prep was the better team for longer stretches in that one. And I think Cathedral Prep, even though they lost that game in overtime, they still have points in 9 straight. So another upset alert there. Perhaps Peters in OT in that one, just because of how close we saw it just last week. So I'm really excited about calling that one in 2 nights.
Yeah, Geico will be for that. Be at the Prinscape Arena for that one. Jeff Morrow.
I think it was evident that Cathedral Prep needed to get a home game for the first round, okay?
Yeah.
Because it's tough to go to play in Erie. And Peters Township plays, Rick Tingle doesn't start his season until mid-November anyway, and he doesn't even pick his team by then. And, you know, you got a state championship goalie in Alex Wilbert. You have Lehman, you have the 2 Wilbur brothers. You have a lot of different components there. Peters Township is 2 years removed from a Penguin Cup state championship.
They've been to the final 3 years in a row,
Yeah,
too.
they've been to the finals. But I'll tell you one thing. There are no two dynamic players in this league than Krzyzewski and Jordan Adams from Cathedral Prep. They could score. They could score. They could score. And I'll tell you what, Peters better mind their P's and Q's. I think this is going to be the best matchup of the first round. I'm going to pick Peters Township in a very close game, 1-goal game.
All right, Ed Major.
I'll just keep this simple. I'm giving Peters the nod, just, you know, home ice advantage, and especially when your visiting team is coming all the way from Erie, maybe a little bit of road.
Yeah. And you just played them, so they're
Cathedral Prep is 9-1 at home, 3-5 on the road. So
yeah,
there you go.
so
Pardon me,
3-6.
3-6.
3-6 on the road. So I give the nod to Peters, and especially you've got 4 Wilbert siblings.
Well, Eric is out. I will say that
Eric
much. Yeah, he has an injury, but yeah.
Eric's okay. So
Are they going to dress Katie because she can score?
Yeah, we've seen it.
We've seen it
saw her
happen.
score a couple.
Is Katie Wilbert a defenseman?
No, she's a forward.
Defender?
She's a forward. So, all right, thank you guys. I'm going to actually just talk with Ed here. We're going to do it a Class B real fast. We thank you guys for coming on here. Yeah. If you guys want to hang out for a little bit, that's fine.
I'm going to go grab a coffee.
All right, I'll see you in a bit, Matt Gajtka.
I'm going to stay for the overtime.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I got a quick one that I want to talk with Ed Major about. We're going to talk about Class B, and then we're going to talk about I'm going to talk with Jeff real fast about the east side of the state, if you want to hang on for a second. We'll start with Ed. The scoring champions in Class B this year the champion was Brad Budos, 61 points from Ringgold. What a phenomenal season for Budos this year. He came on midway last season and just moved along and played very well. And I believe in net this season it was Riley Maskowski from the Shannock, 15-1 on the year. Finished with a .934 save percentage. Congratulations to those two. Ed, we're moving into the bracket. Neshannock, Morgantown. This is the long trip here. Morgantown to Newcastle. Alan Saunders will be there tomorrow at Hess Ice Rink covering that matchup for you. Ed Major, Morgantown plays tough. They're a very good squad. Are they good enough to defeat a veteran squad such from the Shannock?
See, I will admit, I haven't seen the Shannock or Morgantown this year at all, but I think I'm going to err on the side of what I went with in Cathedral Prep Peters Township, the kind of a road woe, like that long trip Morgantown has to make up to Hess to play a very, very good Neshannock team that doesn't really give you many opportunities.
Oh,
so
watch it.
So I think Neshannock will get away with this one. At least two goal difference. I'll give them a goal up and an empty netter.
I like Neshannock here just because they have had of Maskowski. Morgantown has had a good time and an easy time with the with scoring this year. They have a very dynamic offense, runs through a couple players, but Maskowski can just stop everything on will, and I like that in their defense. And they only graduated so many players last season, so it's been a good season for Maskowski stepping in for Burkert after a year, and I'm going to have to say Neshannock here. All right, Carrick Burrell. Okay, here's the catch. No Tyler Stewart on Burrell. No Tyler Stewart on Burrell.
And I think that's going to kind of catch Burrell a little bit because they were used to playing without him for the first half, but they got him back. And I think Burrell as a team is going to be used to kind of playing with him.
He scored
And
30
now
goals
all
in
of a-
7 games.
And now
How
all of
do
a
you
sudden
fill it
he's
up?
not going to be there for the playoffs. The question is, can Burrell adjust post Tyler Stewart? Can they go
Well,
back
the
to how they
first-
were used to him before they got him back?
The first game that they played with Tyler Stewart this season was against Carrick.
I was
And
actually
they-
at
you
that
were at
game
that
there,
game.
and I said, wait, who is this Tyler Stewart kid? Oh, he's back.
You're going to have to play a different game than you were for the last couple weeks. And Carrick with Sean Dugan in net is just a strong team. And Burrell coming off of last 2 years of heartbreak in the Penguins, in the Class B, Class
Yeah.
D2 Penguins Cup. I'm going to call it Penguins Cup because it's still high school hockey. It's not really the right thing to say, but I'm going to say it because I'm going to say it.
It's the only
But
reason it's
it's
not
only
a
just a
Penguins
type,
Cup is
yeah.
because there's no Eastern Class B equivalent.
So, Carrick, Burrell, I got to give it to Carrick here.
Yeah.
They're just deeper, and we're moving on now. Ringgold, Wilmington.
I'm going to apologize to Ringgold here. In our preseason predictions, I left Ringgold out of the playoffs.
I thought that was going a different way.
I can't explain why I was going with that, but I'm going to make it up to you here. I'm going to give you a decisive win over Wilmington.
Yeah,
here.
Wilmington, it's good first season back up at varsity for Wilmington. But Ringgold's just in a different gear. They only graduated Cook last year. Or sorry, they graduated a couple players, but Cook was their major graduate from last season. I believe he actually was their only graduate, their only goaltender. So they're turning that entire Division II, Class B, Penguins Cup
and
championship
they're taking
squad.
full advantage of that.
And they just had a phenomenal season this year in defense of it. Rick Kalinowski had some questions about his team chemistry-wise, but whenever you're doing what they're doing, chemistry doesn't add up. So
Yeah.
at this point, Ringgold, I don't see any reason why they're not going to move along from Wilmington. Avonworth, Elizabeth forward.
I'm going to give an upset alert here. I know maybe a 3 over a 2 might not be considered much of an upset, but Elizabeth forward definitely has a chance to get through Avonworth here. I saw them against Bishop Canavan just last week at Ice Castle as one of the few triple headers that Ice Castle has had this year, and they've just looked solid from the whole way. And from the couple times I've seen them, they can play from ahead, they can play from behind, they can play a close game. It's similar to how Baldwin plays in AA. They can meet any scenario that you give them with relative ease. They don't panic. So I'm calling Elizabeth forward for the upset here.
Yeah, I kind of like Elizabeth forward, and I kind of like Avonworth. And I'll say this much. Avonworth has had the goaltending defense. I think they win in a defense and goaltending aspect of their matchup. Elizabeth forward has the offense. So it's going to come down to one of those who wants it more type games. I think Billy Simmons pretty good in net. I think that gives them somewhat of an advantage, but I got to say 50-50 here, guys. I'm sorry. So we'll go with that, and we'll say that's what we're going to see in Class B. Sorry, we were trying to give you more time today. Unfortunately, we ran a little bit long. I wanted to run this a certain way, and I apologize for that. And so we'll bring in, thank you, Ed Major. I'm going to bring in Jeff Morrow. He's going to talk about the Flyers Cup we got about 5 minutes here at Jeff, so let's get this conversation on the road. What's up? What do you got from the east side of the state?
In AAA, it's been LaSalle for many years. This year, it's a little different. It's been a 3-horse race. Holy Ghost Prep, St. Joe's Prep, and LaSalle. LaSalle's a great program. Wally Boone Brewer. But we have a chance to see Holy Ghost Prep every year up at Jamestown. They had a good young team. I think they're going to be the favorites to win and St. Joe's Prep under Dave Joachim is going to be probably in the finals, and I think this is going to be a year LaSalle sits out in the finals. Okay. Over to go to AA, Central Bucks South is a very good team. They made it to the Pennsylvania finals and won it quite a few years. But there's a team called Haverford High that is coached by John Povey, and they've had a great season in the Intercounty Scholastic Hockey League. They could be one of the favorites to get to the finals. Downingtown West is another team that's not bad. And then one of the surprise teams has been Perkament Valley that was given a heads up. And they've done very well in the Intercounty Scholastic Hockey League. But I think Central Bucks South is probably the favorite to win the Flyers Cup there. Single A, everybody wants to talk about Baird Rustin. Six straight state championships. It's not going to be their year. Kenny Chirico's done a great job with that team. But I'm going to tell you that it's going to be, you're going to have two dark horse teams. The first one's going to be the Hershey Trojans, and the second one is Palmyra out of the Central Penn League. They're dark horse teams. But my favorite is Eric Wolf and the Westchester East Vikings. That's going to be your team that gets to the Flyers Cup, and they're going to win it.
I believe they just won their division.
They won the Intercounty League.
Yeah.
And Eric's been at it a long time. He suffered a lot of overtime losses to Baird Rustin, and this is the year he's going to get it over the top. And you're going to see Thomas Jefferson face Westchester East in the state finals.
Predictions.
You're going to see Latrobe beat Central Bucks South, and you're going to see a rematch of a great game played in Jamestown a year ago between North Allegheny and Holy Ghost Prep.
All right, so we have our predictions in from Jeff Morrow. He pays attention to the eastern side of the state a little bit more than most of us, and I've been trying to learn a little bit more about the eastern side in the last year, and I believe they have a Twitter handle you can follow. The Flyers Club has a Twitter handle if you want to follow along and see what they're going. Not trying to promote them too much, but at the same time, if you want to look ahead and see what's going to happen, I'll be in Westchester for the state championships.
I want to talk to you about that.
We'll talk about that. Yeah.
I'm gonna propose to the Flyers Cup committee to have a roundtable similar to this one at the state finals, and we want to get you on.
All right, we'll see how that plays out.
Let's see if we can make that happen between now and then. We could have a roundtable discussion. We could expand upon what we did here today, and maybe get on with some of the Philadelphia, my buddies over there.
We'll see how that plays. So I want to thank everybody for coming on tonight. Matt Gajtka, Jeff Morrow, and Ed Major. Everybody, thank you for watching our playoff preview show. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Brian Mitchell. Matt Gajtka and I will be on the call for Montour and West Allegheny coming up next in about 13 to 23 minutes. I'm not sure. I've heard two different numbers for that. It's either 7:50 or 8 o'clock, so we'll figure it out. I'm not worried about it. We'll be on time. Yeah, I'm going to go with that, too.
One last thing.
Yeah, go for it.
On behalf of the Western Pennsylvania hockey community, I had a chance to thank Ed Major, but I want to thank you, Alan Saunders, and my buddy Jared Todd Hunter from Stelmont. But your coverage of this has been terrific. What you're doing for high school hockey is terrific, and we just really want to thank all you for what you guys are doing. It's really a great need, a great fit, and you too, Matt. Thank you for what you guys are doing.
That towards Mission Group too. It's great to watch, and it's going to get even better this month. So we're going to have every game covered. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's insane. It's the first time ever we've tried to make it work. It's never really worked out with her, but this year.
I think last year we were, one or two games
I think we had 2 games that we were shy of being able to cover every game in the first round. This year we actually having broadcasts of 4 of the games in the first round. Luckily, that worked out in our favor. That will be the end of our broadcast schedule for 1920. So we appreciate that. Like we said, we thank the league and everybody for allowing us to do that. Having the ability to do that in the postseason is phenomenal. I'll be at Kirk Nevin Arena tomorrow for Latrobe and Armstrong, and then Bishop McCourt and Indiana. And Matt Gajtka will be on for Cannon McMillan and Pine Richland and Cathedral Prep Peters Township at Princescape on Tuesday. So with that being said, I've got to wrap up this party because we're going to start getting kicked out of here. Oh, no. Yeah, sorry, guys. Thank you guys for coming on. I really do appreciate taking your time out on a Sunday night. Appreciate the league for allowing us to do this prior to a big matchup here for the qualifier game. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brian Mitchell. This was Matt Gajtka, Jeff Morrow, and Ed Major. We thank you for joining us. Take care, guys.